On the next episode of Footnote, we meet with author Ahmet Kuru from San Diego University.
New book, which is called Secularism and State Policies Towards Religion.
Kuru asks relevant questions on the nature of secularism.
Assertive secularism and passive secularism. So assertive secularism requires the state to play an assertive role to exclude religion from public domain, and in Turkey and France, that's the dominant ideology.
It's all coming up on the next Footnote.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Footnotes. I'm Molly Pesci, and today we have a fascinating show for you. We have with us Ahmet Kuru, who's going to talk with us about his new book, which is called Secularism and State Policies Towards Religion, the United States, France, and Turkey. It's going to be an amazing conversation. Now, I want to start right out with you, Ahmet. You are an assistant professor from San Diego, and this started as your dissertation, correct?
Yes, it was my dissertation, which received the American Political Science Association's Best Dissertation Award for Religion and Politics section.
Well, congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
fantastic. But I really want to start right at the beginning. Can you define secularism for us so we can really build through this?
The term secularism has multiple meanings in English. In French, you have slightly different terms like laïcité for political and then sécularisation for the social aspect of it. So in this book, I focus on secularism as a political constitutional principle. Therefore, I am not talking about secularization of society in terms of the decline of church participation or decline of religious beliefs. I am not interested in that in the book. I categorize countries in the world in four main categories. One is religious states like Iran, Saudi Arabia, Vatican.
Okay.
Then there are some anti-religious states like North Korea, Cuba, and China with some anti-religious policies. In between, many of the countries today are either secular states like Turkey, France, and United States, in which the state is neutral toward religion, or they have established religions that we see in England, Denmark, and Greece, where there is an established church and official religion. So in this regard, secularism, as defined in this book, implies state neutrality towards religion. And the three cases that I examine in the book, United States, France, and Turkey, are examples of secular states.
Well, what is the theory behind the whole thing?
The theory actually is that, different scholars define secularism referring to separation. I criticize the idea of separation in the book, saying that actually separation is a very vague term and hard to prove, but state neutrality, especially regarding constitutional principles, explain it. Secularism is not one single monolithic phenomenon, but there are two main types of secularism: passive secularism and assertive secularism. Passive secularism requires the state to play a passive role by tolerating public visibility of religion, whereas assertive secularism requires the state to play an assertive role to exclude religion from the public domain and confine it to private life.
So just so that we're all understanding, you use headscarves really as a huge example. So in the United States, wearing a headscarf is fine. That's an expression of your religion. But in France and Turkey, that's not.
That's a different case. Why? Because I argue that in all three countries, the two types of secularism and different ideologies are struggling. In the United States, passive secularism is dominant, but still it has two different interpretations. Separationists want to see a Jeffersonian wall of separation in the United States. And Supreme Court is evenly divided between separationists on the one hand and accommodationists on the other. Or in the daily life we use the term liberal justices and conservative justices. So for conservatives, it's fine to see more state-religion interaction as long as the state is not prefer one religion at the expense of other religions. So in this regard, in the United States, the passive secularism is dominant with two different interpretations. And when I conducted interviews with different NGOs, groups, political actors, they both sides, both liberals and conservatives, says, oh, we will never impose a ban on headscarf. It's French and Turkish exception. So in this regard, United States is different. When we look at France and Turkey, we see that assertive secularism is dominant in these two countries as an ideology to exclude religion from public sphere. But still, struggles are going on. Neither Turkey nor France is monolithic. Yeah, the things are very dynamic. There are exceptions and changings. Yeah, therefore, as a political scientist, I should admit that the models we put doesn't explain reality completely. Therefore, it's a 300-page book rather than one single page.
Absolutely. You know, Ahmet, when we come back, we're going to take a short break. What I really want to talk to you next is your inspiration. What brought you to the idea for this book, and a little bit about your family and background. So stay with us. We will be right back with Ahmet Kuru. Welcome back to Footnote. We're here with Ahmet Kuru, and we are talking about his book, Secularism and State Policies Towards Religion, the United States, United States, France, and Turkey. I doubt it would be important if I mix them, but we will keep it right on. I want to go and talk to you a little bit about your inspiration, Ahmet. What brought you to this book? And give us a little bit about your background.
I'm originally from Turkey. So my wife also from Turkey, and she is now writing her dissertation. And what I initially was planning to examine was the relationship between Islam and politics, especially in the aftermath of the end of the Cold War, and especially in the aftermath of September 11. It became a huge issue. But the more I examine the issue of Islam and politics, the more I find similarity rather than differences between Islam and Christianity and other religions in terms of their interaction with the secular state. And at the end, I decided to examine one North American Protestant-dominant or Christian-dominant country, United States, one European Catholic-dominant country, and then one European/Middle Eastern Islam-dominant Turkey, rather than examining Turkey per se or an Islamic country per se. The reason is that Islam is seen as an exceptional religion today, as a religion which is inherently incompatible with secularism or, for some people, liberal democracy. What I try to reveal in the book is that what Muslims in Turkey struggle with in terms of their relation with secular state is very similar what Catholics in France and even Protestants and Catholics and other religious groups in the United States in terms of the struggle with secular state. Yeah. So in this regard, the book tried to criticize the idea that Islam is exceptional. And there's a myth in Turkey. Many Turks, even some court justices in Turkey, think that Turkey is the only secular state in the Muslim world. Then I examined 46 Muslim majority countries where Muslims are more than 50%. The result is surprising that 20 out of 46 have secular states. Turkey is not the only one. There are 19 other secular states in the Muslim world.
That's fascinating, because the perception as an American is that Turkey is the only one.
Yeah, even in Turkey, that's the perception. But we have many.
And you've taken that away from everybody now. All
yes,
right, so
exactly.
That's all right,
in Africa, we have Senegal, Mali. Right. In South Asia, we have Indonesia. Then we have Lebanon, Albania. In Central Asia, former Soviet Republic. They are all secular. In the Constitution, they said it's a secular state.
But I want to play devil's advocate for you, because a lot of people believe that if there is just the Muslim religion, and the state is not secular, or is secular, and the freedom of choice, that it would become more and more conservative. But you have an argument against that.
Yeah,
correct?
I have an argument against that, and I think the comparison between Iran and Turkey makes sense. Why? Because in Iran, the Shah's policies of secularization was very authoritarian, top-down, and oppressive. Then the result was Khomeini-type revolution. Action produced reaction. What we have in Turkey since 1950s, despite some military interventions, there are multi-party democracy and elections that really accommodate, tolerate, and moderate both sides, both secularist side and Islamist side. Today, there is no longer a huge conflict between secularism and Islam in Turkey. What we have today is the debate between the supporters of passive secularism and assertive secularism. The bureaucracy and the dominant elite right now want to keep assertive secularism, the French-type secularism, in Turkey. Whereas the new elite, the ruling party right now, including the prime minister, want to refine, want to reinterpret secularism in a more passive manner that I would call more American style.
This is a fascinating. We have to continue this. So when we come back from the break, we are going to really break down the three countries, the United States, France, and Turkey, and really keep on with this discussion. Ahmet Kuru is here. I'm Molly Pesci. You're watching Footnote. We'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to Footnote. I'm Molly Pesci, and we're having a fascinating conversation with Ahmet Kuru about his book, Secularism and State Policies Towards Religion, the United States, France, and Turkey. And when we were last talking, you were making some fascinating points about how Turkey is trying to, there's a debate going on, whether the secularism should follow the path of France versus the United States. And as an American, it's very interesting to me because I see France as being much more open towards religion, and that the United States is a more conservative place, but really that's not the case.
Yeah, because I try to, when I try to understand the cases, I use the terms assertive secularism and passive secularism. So assertive secularism requires the state to play an assertive role to exclude religion from public domain, and in Turkey and France, that's the dominant ideology. Whereas in the United States, that's passive secularism that tolerate public visibility of religion. When I look at the reason for that, why these two became dominant in the three countries, I find the root in history. So in France and Turkey, there is the notion of ancien regime, the old regime. In the 18th century and even before that, there was the marriage of Catholic Church and the Catholic monarchy in France, the French monarchy in France. And then the Islamic ulama and the Ottoman Sultan in the late Ottoman Empire. So the Republicans in both cases became both anti-monarchy and anti-religious to a certain extent. That became the historical root of assertive secularist domination in the two countries.
Whereas, so I see, so because the monarchy in both cases had been tied to a religion,
yes,
they didn't just go against the monarchy, they also went against the religion.
Exactly. Yeah, but in the United States, America was a new immigrant society. There was no hegemonic religion. Yeah. When we look at the 13 colonies, the northern colonies, New England, had congregational churches established. In the south, we had Anglican establishment. In three of them, no establishment at all. And it was diversity. And because of the religious diversity, the Republican was not that much anti-religious that we see in the French and Turkish cases. That's the historical explanation of the domination of the two type of ideologies. But if we analyze the cases in a deeper manner, we see that even France is more tolerant than Turkey. Why? For example, when you mentioned the headscarf ban. In Turkey, it is in all educational institutions, in both public schools and private schools, both schools and universities. Whereas in France, the ban is only for public schools. A student with headscarf can attend private schools in France and attend universities. It's much limited. And when we look at the issue of democracy, what we see is that in France, 70% of people supported the ban on headscarf because of their concern about Islam. You may call it Islamophobia or their assertive secularist ideology. But in Turkey, those who support the ban constitute only 20-25% of population. It's a minority. 70-75 want to lift the ban. How can we explain this puzzle? The main reason is that Turkey is a democratizing country. It is not a perfect, complete, consolidated democracy yet. The bureaucracy embraced the idea of assertive secularism, and the judges and the generals really keep bans and operations like headscarf ban, whereas the majority of society oppose that. So in this regard, what we see is that when we look at the three cases, we see fascinating comparison of ideologies and history. And at the same time, democracy play an important role. So France is more democratic than Turkey. Therefore, it's more tolerant towards religious symbols than Turkey is.
And surprisingly, the United States is the most tolerant.
The most tolerant,
yeah.
And when I presented this project in Paris, my French audience was surprised, and they criticized me, saying that, oh, you over-romanticize United States. Look what they did to Muslims after September 11.
Absolutely.
And what I answered to them was that what happened to some minorities in the United States, for example, in 19th century to Mormons, then Catholics, even in the early 20th century, was not because of passive secularism. It was despite of passive secularism.
I want to stop you there. We have to take a break. It's so interesting that I want to keep going, but we're going to take a quick break, everybody. And when we get back, we will continue this fascinating conversation about secularism, Turkey, France, and the United States. You're watching Footnote. Welcome back to Footnote. I'm Molly Pesci, and I'm here with Ahmet Kuru. And we're right in the middle of a fascinating discussion about the idea, and where we left was that the United States reaction after September 11th was, in many cases, shameful towards Islam. And I want to touch you a little bit more about that, because you see that as more of an exception to the rule of the secularism we've created in the United States, almost like it happened because of a particular event.
Exactly. I said that it was despite the passive secularist tradition in the United States, and right now, especially after the Obama administration, we see that there's a rehabilitation, recovery of certain policies, attitudes, at least at the discursive level. And what we see is that the Muslim experience in the United States is very important for Muslims throughout the world. For example, right now the biggest Islamic institution in the United States name is ISNA, and the president of the ISNA recently was elected, or a female Canadian origin Islamic scholar in the United States, Ingrid Mattson, was elected as the president of ISNA. So that's a strong message to Muslims all around the world, saying that Muslims in the United States is flourishing, and they give rights to women and their understanding of gender relations is a strong signal to Muslims all around the world. And Turkey, I think, will also play a very important role for the Muslim world as being a secular state, a democratic state, and hopefully a member of European Union. So right now, the Turkey is expanding its foreign influence toward both Middle Eastern countries and Balkans and Caucasia. And if Turkey proves itself as a healthy democracy, as a meaningful secular state, alliance with democracy, then it will constitute a very good example to Muslim countries or societies all around the world.
Now, we talked about this a bit earlier, but a lot of people would say, well, in the United States, you have so many different religions. Keeping, on a certain level, keeping each other honest. The Catholics might be more moderate than the fundamentalists, and then the Jewish populations and the Muslim populations all I don't want to say warring, but all pushing against each other to make sure that we keep complete religious freedom in the country so that not one of them becomes more important.
Yeah.
When you have a country like Turkey, for instance, there is the worry, I think, that because 98% of the people have the same religion, the minute you say, well, we're going to allow headscarves and we're going to make all of these things as free as we want, that a fundamentalist group might take over.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and many people raise it in different occasions. I would say that, first of all, Turkey is not a homogeneous country, as 99% is Muslim, but there are Sunni Muslims and Alevi Muslims. Among Sunnis, there are different schools of thought. Or among Sunnis, there are secular, those who embrace secular lifestyles, drinking alcohol and wearing bikini, and those who embrace more conservative lifestyles. Even those who embrace conservative lifestyles, there are different political opinions and diversity of political opinions. So in this regard, it is not a monolithic Muslim country. It is much more diverse and dynamic. The second thing is that it is hard to provide United States as an example because, as you mentioned, it has its own unique exceptional features. Therefore, rather than saying American secularism, American type, I say passive secularism as a tolerant version of secularism. Each and every country may produce its own version of passive secularism. They don't have to imitate the American model. There is no one unique, perfect model. Each country, through its own democratic experience, should produce its own version, its own understanding of passive secularism, which would really help them to solve problems between state and society, between state and religion.
Well, Ahmet, we need more people like you in the world who can take very complicated issues and explain it to where I can easily understand it. I thank you very much. The book is called Secularism and State Policies Toward Religion, the United States, France, and Turkey. It is a fascinating read, and let me just say, when you read this book, you feel better about yourself for having read it. I feel smarter. I feel like I know a little bit more about the world, and I feel like it erases a lot of prejudices that people may have. Ahmet, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.